Okay, I think we're live. I think we're all systems go. Okay, welcome to the very first edition of Give Out But Don't Give Up. We are here to put a vaguely light spin on things, but to try and share some information and some inspiration with you, particularly those of you who have had your working lives turned upside down with the crazy goings on in the last few days. We know it's serious. We know this is a huge global crisis. I'm not going to make light of it, but we are going to try and give ourselves some energy and a bit of inspiration to get through this. Okay, this is my first time broadcasting, particularly on Facebook Live. I was planning on doing this on YouTube, and I think I will do next week, but apparently YouTube needs 24 hours to set itself up. So we, much as a great metaphor for the world in which we're living in at the moment, at the very last minute, literally 40 minutes ago, decided to change the way we do this. And here we are on Facebook Live. Have no idea how this is going to go. I'm hoping that you guys can share comments as we go, because I want this to be an interactive kind of thing. But we will see. I have no idea. I can see a screen in front of me. I can see my horrible mug as well. But hey, let's get started. If I don't hear from anyone, I'll either not take it personally and assume it was a technical difficulty, or I will go out the back and cry afterwards. Okay, awesome. Welcome to Give Up But Don't Give Out. I know I've nicked that title from Primal Scream. If you don't know the Primal Scream album, Give Up But Don't Give Out, do get to know it. It's on all the usual outlets, and it's an awesome album. And most of us, no, actually not most of us, some of us have a lot more time on our hands to do things like listen to the music we want to listen to, and put on things in the background, maybe stream some Netflix and things like that while we're working, because our working lives have changed. And we're really going to focus on that today. For those of you who don't know me, I wrote a book a couple of years ago. I didn't pick up a copy. It's over there on the shelf, and I'm not going to leave the chair right now. I wrote a book called The Human Workplace. It's all about how we live, work, and collaborate together, and how things cross over from offices to different workplaces, and what that looks like. There was a big piece on remote working in there, and our relationships between individuals, teams, managers, leaders, customers, employees, and how that all works as a big community and ecosystem. So I'm not going to say I'm the expert on this subject, but hopefully I have some opinion that will be interesting to some of you. So if you are able to comment, come on and send comments, share questions with me. I don't pretend to be the expert on any of this, so anything I give is going to be my opinion based on the research and experiments I've done. We'll talk about some of my ridiculous experiments as well, but in the spirit of giving up and not giving out, I do want to give out a little bit to start with, and I think that's one of my key skills. So let's do that before we get into the thing of today. So I have all the questions you guys have sent in a big pile there, so thank you so much for sending those. If you want to get in touch, you can get me on andy@andyswan.io at any time. Please feel free to send any comments. Remember, 2 N's in Swan. I'm on Instagram at humanandyswan, Twitter at andyswan. You can find me on LinkedIn, etc., etc. I think my Facebook page has a mobile phone number attached to it. If you want to call in, although I can't see my mobile phone at the moment, we could even try and take a call on air. But let's try and not run before we can walk. So a couple of things I want to give out about. First of all, let's talk about stay at home. Now, there's a lot of people being idiots, and there was a lot of news yesterday about the most ridiculously crowded public spaces like Snowdon and places like that. It's all over the news. Everybody's giving out. And so we should. You know, this is a serious situation. And I think rather than tell everybody, stay at home, you can't do this, you can't do that, people will have to go out occasionally. People know whether they can distance themselves enough from other people. I mean, I went out for a walk last night at 9 p.m. There was nobody else around. I didn't see another human being. And I think I needed that exercise. I needed to get the fresh air. I needed to clear my head. But I think rather than just hitting everybody and say, stay at home, be scared and panic, why don't we just say, don't be an idiot. Use your brain, limit your social contact, limit going out unless it's necessary. Just do the sensible thing. Whether or not that's possible, or whether people just can't be sensible, that's another thing entirely. But I think most people should be able to be sensible. So I'm going to give out about the idiots. I had a swear word written down on this piece of paper, but I'm not going to swear. To counterbalance giving out about the idiots, I am going to give a big shout out to the key workers, particularly the wonderful people working for the NHS. You guys are doing an absolutely sterling job. You're keeping this country moving in a way that other people aren't. Now, I'll give a massive shout out to the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, who has done some amazing work here in the UK. I know there are things happening in the US, and there are people watching from the US as well, but due to the nature of my US visa, I am currently I'm currently here in the UK for the foreseeable future. So this is where most of the news I'm consuming is. Chancellor's doing a great job, announced a lot of great saving support for businesses, particularly those really badly hit in the hospitality and entertainment industry. Big shout out to you guys. I have relations and friends who work in those industries, and I know how hard it is. However, the awesome government package that was announced last week is not going so well from the delivery point of view. So I spent 4 hours on the phone to different banks today to try and find out a bit more about, I don't know how you say this, is it the COBILS or COBILS, but the government loan guarantee scheme for businesses impacted by coronavirus. I spent an hour and 5 minutes on hold for one bank who then hung up on me. I spent 40 minutes on hold for my own bank, who then told me to just visit their website. I followed the link that they told me to follow, and there was absolutely no information whatsoever. And now it's great that the government is trying to support businesses, and it's such a comprehensive package, the like of which we haven't seen in peacetime. However, if the banks, and let's bear in mind, the banks are the ones who got bailed out the last time there was a crisis. They took the taxpayers' money. That's how they're even here now. So if the banks can't put that money to good use and get it distributed effectively to the people who need it, what is the goddamn point of that? So that's my give out to start this. Giving out about the banks, love the NHS, giving out about idiots, also giving out about salespeople. Had a lot of sales emails the last week or so trying to sell off the back of coronavirus. You know, you may have a product that helps, but don't hit me with other people's tragedy to try and sell. So, okay, that's the giving out. I know that a lot of you have sent in questions for me, and I think that is why you're all here. You don't want to hear me give out all day. Everybody who is related to me hears that anyway. So this is more of a show for those of you who are at home, maybe working from home, maybe you're used to going into the office or a different workplace. I think we fall into the trap sometimes of assuming that every workplace is an office, but it's not. So this is for you if you cannot work in your usual way. Some of you might be stuck at home. Some of you may have to go to other places and take huge precautions. You may be trying to go into factories or other areas. The retail environment, it's just not the same. So for anyone whose work has changed, this is for you. I've been sent in some great questions, and the questions that I've been sent in kind of vary on two sides. There's the personal side and the professional stroke organizational side. The kind of effect of work has changed, the way we do things has changed. Will it ever come back? How can I manage this new style of work that I'm suddenly thrust into, through to how can we engage as companies, how can we prepare for the future, and some really interesting ones. So I'm going to try and work through these questions, and then we will see what other things come up as we run through them. I'm going to try and give some of the insight that I've had, some of the ideas that I will share. But yeah, if you disagree and you can comment, please do comment. But let's see where we go. Okay, Michael, thank you so much to you for writing in. So Michael says he is new to remote working and he's hoping to gain some useful knowledge on the topic. Okay, so we have a number of questions on remote working and we're going to work through that. But I think this is a really starting point because I think there's a lot of people who are new to remote working, particularly office workers who are used to being somewhere at 9 o'clock every day, maybe staying until 5:30, occasionally working past that, taking the lunch break at the same time every day, having the same commute. That's the kind of prepare yourself decompression time at the start and end of the day. And there's this routine that's suddenly been disrupted. And all of a sudden, you're working from home in a way that you're not used to. And that routine disappears. I mean, as humans, we're creatures of habit. So the minute that routine disappears, that affects us. So that's probably a major thing. And then there's the isolation. There's the not being able to socialize in the way that you socialized with your colleagues previously and the way you connect with them. Even that small talk when you're making a cup of tea and you bump into people and you're just like, how was your weekend? Did you see this? Or have you thought this about this piece of work? And that kind of social interaction that not only allows you to kind of get to know your colleagues on a personal level, but also to discuss work in a very informal level in passing, as well as collaborate more intensely as well. All of that has been thrown into let's call it chaos. But I think the thing to do, if you're new to remote working, if this is a first time from you where you really have to work from home, where you really have to isolate, and it's really pronounced, then I think really sit down and look at your working day. How does your working day work from you? At what time of day do you work best? At what time of day do you have to work to deliver the work you need to do? But also, what time of day do you personally work best? Because I think for many people, going into the office at 9 o'clock, leaving at 5 o'clock, that's not necessarily your most productive hours anyway. It's just the time you're contracted to be there. And there are huge stats on the amount of hours and productivity lost from workplaces from people who don't get enough sleep. And you've got to think, actually, if you work around when you're feeling productive and feeling able to best do your work, that is the best way for you to work. So I would say if you're new to remote working, at the very start, map out your criteria. When do you work best? Or maybe look at it for a few days. What are the restrictions around you? What things do you have in your life that are going to govern how you have to work? So I think a good point to bring in here is the next question from Tanya. Hi, Tanya. So Tanya actually asked how do you work effectively when you're together with kids in social isolation? And now I think for anyone who's ever worked from home with kids anyway, having kids at home while you're working from home is one big thing. Having kids at home while you're all in isolation and everybody's bouncing off the wall is another thing. But also, I guess, if your kids are school age and now all of a sudden the schools have closed and you have to homeschool them at the same time, that level of change to your routine and trying to balance how you do all of these things without exhausting yourself, while trying to do the best job of it, while trying to do your best work, while trying to ensure that your kids don't fall behind with school, while making sure that you don't kill your entire close family members, is quite a difficult balance. So again, look at the pockets of time you have. I mean, if you have another adult in the house who you can share some of the burden with, actually try and get some protected time. Make sure you both individually have some protected time to do the work you need to do. But also try and map out the different criteria. What do your kids need through the day? When do you need to eat? When do you need to do this? And I think just try and find a routine that fits you, and over time get into that routine that enables you to stay productive. And now on the idea of staying productive, it's very easy when you work from home or work remotely to get into a really negative cycle. It's something that I did. I did something called the Work Project a few years ago, which was me trying out different forms of work, and a lot of that involved me working in isolation, working remotely, working from home. And particularly when you work from home from blocks of time, if you've got bits of work to do that don't depend on other people, actually you start thinking, I'm not going to shave today, I'm not going to get dressed today, oh, I can work until 2 a.m. and then or 4 a.m. then I can sleep until 10 or 11, and all of a sudden you lose that routine and you start to lose the productivity and your mental sharpness starts to go, because there's a kind of balance here. It's possible. You can do great work in your pants at the kitchen table if that's the right place to do your great work. If you're in your pants at the kitchen table because you've reached a point where you can't be bothered to get dressed because you've got yourself in a cycle of bad sleep, bad routine, lack of focus, then that's a completely different thing. So from the very start, let's look at remote working as what fits us as individuals. If we're stuck in a box, let's call our houses boxes. If we're stuck in a box, what can we do to optimize our time as individuals to make ourselves more productive? Because what works for me won't necessarily work for you, won't necessarily work for somebody else in your house as well. So actually just take some time to map it. Don't expect to be working at full steam from day one. Just take it as you go. Get advice, see what tools are out there as well. See what apps you can get on your phone, whether it's setting alarms, setting reminders, using some to-do list apps. One I use quite a lot is Todoist. There's a lot of these things to kind of help you be productive. And while there's a case that actually sometimes you can have too many productivity tools, using some to your optimum are good, and we'll touch on that in a bit. Okay, so Tamasin, hey Tamasin, how are you? It's just a general query on, interested to know what others are doing, and also interested to know what useful stuff she can share with learners studying HR qualifications with her. So that's a really interesting one. I think gaining inspiration from what other people are doing and sharing that is actually a really good point here. Don't assume that everybody else knows best. Don't assume that I know best. Don't assume that you don't know anything at all, because you know yourself. You know what works best for you, and you know how to make yourself productive and what feels good and what feels bad. But then pick and choose some of the insight from other people. If someone shares an app or someone shares a technique, look into it. Don't assume it's going to work for you, and don't assume that implementing someone else's blueprint is the way to go. Just take inspiration from all the other stories that's around there. And it's right now is great. You've got things like this, but you've got people posting on LinkedIn left, right, and center. You've got people sharing apps. Even on the kind of the less business or work related social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on everywhere, you can pick up this inspiration. Okay, brilliant. Just had a comment through from Matthias while we were saying that. Sorry, I got distracted by the first comment coming in. Matthias says, showering and putting on some cool clothes is crucial to working from home. And I think, that's absolutely essential. There are people who find, actually, when they're used to getting dressed up to go to work, I mean, I'm here in my hoodie for a very deliberate reason. I work in whatever clothes fit me on that particular day. There were no meetings today. I wanted to be comfortable, wore a hoodie, but some people wear a suit to work on a daily basis. If that's you, if you get dressed up to go to work, you will probably find that getting up in the morning and getting dressed up to go to work, to get that distance, almost to get that distance between your bed state and your working state, is a really good thing. So kind of try and follow that routine, prepare for work, go to work. Even if going to work is only going to the sofa or the kitchen table or sitting on your bed with a laptop, just go there and feel like you're working, protect some of that time and try and reduce those distractions as much as possible. Tom has come in as well with, again, more general interest on how others are approaching the challenges of modern or remote working. Be really cool to get any comments from you guys to let us know any tips you have. And I think it's probably a good time to look at bringing in actually conversations around some of the technology you use. How can you use tech to enable you to work in that way? I was only thinking this morning that actually the world all of a sudden feels a bit like the pre-internet age of the 1990s. We've been speeding up ever since the internet went mainstream. Work and the expectation and pressure on us has been speeding up, and then we got Blackberries and smartphones, and then we were always on and we were always connected, and it's just kind of, the world has sped up and sped up and sped up, and now there's this kind of enforced gap and this enforced breather. It's almost like the world is kind of taking a breath and stepping back, and things have calmed down a bit, because when we all are kind of remote working, there's a little bit more buffer. You can take a little bit longer to kind of respond and to get things going, and people suddenly seem a little bit more relaxed about the actual work and are starting to think more about life. And it's very much the way it kind of felt in the 1990s, just before the internet boom. However, what we have now going for us is the fact that we can enable ourselves through tech and work in a far more remote, relaxed way, because that's kind of what all this tech has been for. That's what Slack was created for, Microsoft Teams, what Yammer and things like that originally. It's what social media enables us to do. We can stay connected, we can stay collaborative, even when we're not in the same place. And actually this now allows us to kind of put that into practice. There's been a lot of talk about flexible working, remote working for a number of years now, and some companies do it really well, others really struggle with it. I know there was a famous story of when Yahoo demanded that all of their remote workers start coming back into the office every day because they didn't have control of them. And I think it's that you need to find the infrastructure that works for you, whether it's individually or as a company, to enable you to connect with the right people, get the work done you need to do in the best way on your terms. And we do have the technology, literally the technology in our pockets to do that. I mean, I could pull my phone out and away from having an HD camera, I could write a Microsoft Word document, or I could go onto Slack and converse with people, or head onto Twitter and get the latest news, or surf the internet and find any of the information I want, or get a Medium blog that says 10 ways to work more effectively when you're on your own. It's all there right in our pocket, and I think that's the really exciting opportunity here. We've almost kind of finally been forced to mainstream adopt remote working out of necessity for the first time ever, and it's a real proof of concept in a way that there's never been before, and I think that's a really exciting opportunity. So if that's the way you've been hit, don't be scared by the fact it might be uncertain, or it might be something that you're not used to. Embrace that unknown, embrace the fact you're not entirely sure how this is going to be. You don't know what systems are going to be best. On day one of remote working, you don't know how it's going to be. You don't exactly know, and we've all seen that clip of the guy trying to give a TV interview when his kids run in the back and he just goes into meltdown. Actually, be a bit human about it. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know when our space is going to be invaded when we're working from home, but you know what? We all have lives. Every single one of us is a human, and for too long we've pretended to be robots at work, and this kind of professional facade we put up. You know what? If your kids run in, give them a hug, stick them on your lap, continue working. Or if you can't continue working, take 5 minutes. If you really need that protected time, then great, take it. But flex around the demands you have, but use technology to enable it. I mean, yeah, today's been a really great example for me. I've managed to have a conversation with my accountant via Zoom at very short notice, and it was awesome. It was far nicer than a phone call. Obviously, I couldn't go to his office, but he literally sent me a Zoom link, and we were on. And you know, Zoom's only one of them. There's Blue Jeans, there's all the others. And you know what? If you don't have that, then just stick on WhatsApp. Call people on WhatsApp. All the other, Microsoft Teams, Slack, you can get plugins for all of these. They all work. You've still got Google Hangouts. There's so much tech everywhere. And on a social level as well, these aren't just business tools. Yes, we use them for working, but actually last Friday, my friends and I started something called the Virtual Winchester. For those of you who have or haven't seen the film Shaun of the Dead, you'll know that the Winchester is the place to go where when you need to wait for things to blow over. But yeah, we started the Virtual Winchester, and we all stuck on a Zoom call, so we could all be in the room. It does really cool things. It focuses on the different people who are talking, and you can actually have quite a good social experience with that. There's some cool apps as well where you can gift people things. So you could send people drink. I read a news story the other day, and I have no idea where it was, but it was about two people who were due to go on a date. And when the date couldn't happen, one of them sent the other one some money via an app to buy a bottle of wine. She went to the corner shop, bought a bottle of wine. They both bought the same bottle of wine and sat and had an online call for I think it was only their second date, and they had a great time. So yeah, there's different things we can do, and we have to realize that things aren't the way they were. What was normal is kind of changed for now. It may change forever. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, particularly with how organizations then start to organize, how they enable people to work flexibly and then lead them and manage them, and we'll come to that in a second. Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. Jessica has actually written in with a question to cover some of what we've just discussed here. Interested in finding balance in remote working. That kind of issue of always being online. And it's true, because just as much as you can get in a cycle of sitting in your pants and not getting dressed and just kind of lounging, as many people who are kind of reporting the fact they get lost in their social feeds, they just spend too much time procrastinating and not doing anything, there are other people who will now always feel like they're at work. They will constantly be feeling they should respond. If somebody messages them because that person's got in a cycle of working at 2 in the morning, do you need to reply to an email at 2 in the morning? If Slack or Teams goes off, do you need to be straight away on that? Do you need to be commenting on things? Do you need to be joining the group chats? And there's some really great things you can do. Make things optional. Make group chat. If you're going to have like a team or a company group chat, make it optional for people who can make it. Don't expect people to reply to you, and don't expect to have to reply to people. As long as you go back to people in a way that doesn't hold up their work, and you take responsibility for your work, and it's reasonably timely, then that's a great way to do it. And it's kind of a balance, because it's a balance for you to find what fits you around working enough but not working constantly, but also finding what works for your peers and your colleagues to enable you all to start kind of plugging in this blurring of the boundary between life and work. And now that's quite an interesting thing. So I have something called the Life Work Podcast. I'm going to plug it now. If you haven't listened to it, head over to my website, andyswan.io. You'll find the episodes of the podcast, and in that I interview people who have changed the relationship between life and work. And for too long we've been talking about work-life balance. We go out to work, we come home, are we taking enough time for life? And actually, as more and more purpose-led things have come through, we've been able to work more flexibly. Tech has enabled us to be more remote anyway. This idea of kind of life work, where the two things are becoming one single experience, has come through. And so I interview some really great people on that. And I think that's a really key part of finding this balance. If you do something you love, it's very easy to always work, but then it doesn't always feel like work. But you have to find that balance. Don't work so hard you burn yourself out and run yourself into the ground, because every month you'll be up and then you'll be down. Oh, hit the microphone. Find a balance, or find the integration. Let's call it integration, work-life integration that works for you. And this enforced period of remote working for many people is now becoming that. On the flip side of that, you've got to spare a thought for the key workers who are out there working harder than ever and have to go to those places and potentially put themselves at risk. Again, another massive shout out to those people who are keeping the country running. But for those of you who are actually going to go out and use this time to volunteer, and help others and be part of this effort to get through this crisis, then what an awesome thing to be able to balance around your home and work life. This shift and moving us out of our traditional work routines is actually allowing us to do more and to kind of be more rounded as human beings. But it is a balance. You have to work out how that fits in, because otherwise you are always working. And if you work at what you love, that's great. But if you do work and you have another life outside that, you need to find what's right for you. Awesome. So I think we've kind of covered some of the personal bit. We've started talking a bit about some of the tech that's come through. But let's talk more about the relationship between people and organizations now. So Sarah has emailed in and would like to know about equipping leaders during this time. It's key for her company. So obviously, there's the lens of remote, disparate and disrupted workers, which we kind of all are at the moment, and we've touched on a bit. But also, there is this idea that maybe work will never be the same again. Maybe once this is all over, there's either a realization or a necessity that the way we work has to change, particularly if we're commuters or going into offices or going into specific locations. Now, in my research, when I wrote The Human Workplace, I talked about the head office as like the stadium and every other experience with an organization radiating out from that. So you can still be connected to the organization, but the biggest experience is being the player on the pitch in the middle of the stadium, or the most connected. So I think we're already seeing this rethinking of the workplace and the organization as kind of a platform and a destination to enable people to participate in their best possible way. And I think that thinking now is going to elevate a lot. So in terms of organizational development, I talk sometimes about the CEO actually becoming the chief experience officer, because when people thrive, the organization thrives too. So if for the executives, they spend all of their time creating the right experience for everybody as individuals and teams to do their best work at any given time, whether that's in a specific location, whether that's remotely, whether that's day or night, if everybody has the toolkit to be able to have the experience to do their best work at any given time, and that includes wellness, that includes learning, all of these different things, then they will succeed in their work. And as a result of the individuals succeeding, teams succeed, the organization succeeds. So I think this is almost an enforced shift towards some of that thinking now. But we still need physical workplaces as destinations, almost like the clubhouse where you go to have that enhanced connection. So I think that's really important. I think we should always keep an eye on how this might completely change work. And I think it was funny, like literally a few months ago, I was having a conversation, it may have been at a conference or something, but we were talking about how like smartphones came through and completely shifted the way we worked, and we already had the internet, but all of a sudden smartphones just kind of came through and moved everything on. And it was as much as we talk about the elevation of technology and how rapidly it progresses, actually smartphones changed the game. We weren't expecting everybody to suddenly be using apps all the time and everything to be kind of immediately in our pocket, and that kind of shifted how we worked, and it wasn't so predicted. That was one of the things that wasn't well predicted, and actually we didn't predict this. I was only saying that something will come that none of us have seen coming, and it will change the way we work. And I didn't know it would be something as severe as this, but this is here now, and none of us saw it coming. None of us were ready for it. Literally, the game is still changing every single day, where we can go, where we can't go, who we can mix with, how we do it, who's able to work, who's not able to work, whether companies survive or fail, and what that means for the economy, what that means for all of our future. That is literally shifting on a daily basis. And yes, it's an anxious time for a lot of us. However, it's also a time to take stock and re-examine who we are, how we work, and how we come together. So in terms of going back to Sarah's question around equipping leaders, how do we equip leaders at this time? And I think that's a really essential thing, because as a leader, you thrive on connection. And I really like the fact you've used the word leader there and not manager, Sarah, because I think it would be really easy to say, well, managers just manage on tasks. Just tell me when you've done your tasks, I'll measure them, and they're done. But actually, leaders are more about that engagement, about enablement, about bringing people forward with them. And if that's about connection and holistically checking in on everybody's well-being and how they interact, how do you do that when you can't be in the same place? And I've seen some companies already doing some really great things. There are some great kind of morning check-in calls, but they're not enforced work calls. They're just general kind of social calls. Friday drinks online, going back to my virtual Winchester idea. I mean, there was a horrific video doing the rounds on Twitter either yesterday or this morning, where an unfortunate person put the phone in a very unfortunate place while on a company call. But all the kind of issues around bearing in mind how you use your tech and what's on screen and all of those things and all the possible pitfalls of doing it. Once you're up and running, actually, we have this tech to enable us to collaborate and stay together. I mean, my company, my amazing team, we use Teams. Teams is our absolute Bible. We use Asana for managing projects. We use Teams for collaborating both in our UK office and our US office, particularly while we're all remote. We do all our calls through it. We log all of our chats through it. We thank each other through it. We share, we kind of have a laugh through it. You have different channels for different purposes. And I think that's all there as an opportunity now. But I guess it's enabling leaders to do what's right for them. No one will know a team better than the individual leader of that team. So give them the freedom to act, to engage their team in the best possible way. But don't just give them freedom, give them the support to hold that together. If you don't have the tools in place in your organization, allow them to put them in place, or give them the backup to implement them, or allow people to go into interfaces that they're used to. I mean, we all use WhatsApp outside of work, and I'm seeing some really great WhatsApp groups coming up from different companies all of a sudden, because actually it's an easy way that we're all familiar with engaging and staying in contact when we're not in the same place as other people. We all use social media, so some of these kind of familiar interfaces are really useful, because it's not like a chore that, oh God, I'm at work now, I have to do this. It's actually an interface that you're used to that you will use every day. So try and replicate what people are doing anyway in order to frame your communication. And that's a really great way to go. And give your leaders the toolkit they need to allow them to yes, of course people have to do their work, and that's essential, but allow your leaders to make sure that people are able to do their work, not that they're wrapping them over the knuckle with a stick. Make sure that they're able to coach people and see them through. So just as much as leaders need to be able to coach their individuals and their teams, actually the leaders need coaching and support themselves, and it just needs to pass up. And I think this is a real opportunity for us to actually move into that coaching mindset, actually, because if people are at home, if people are detached, it's very easy to start feeling isolated. You can feel given the way of the world at the moment, very anxious, very stressed, very lonely, very detached, and all of these things creep in. And actually, you won't get past that through traditional management. Actually, you will get through that by coaching and supporting each other. Monet has just messaged in to say she was also thinking that work will never be the same. She's just shared a statistic that the average 8.8 hour workday only has about 3 hours of productivity. Yeah, and there's some other stats as well, like people get distracted in offices once every 3 minutes or something ridiculous. It's incredible. So Monet thinks that the new method allows people the flexibility to put work down and come back to it when ideas are fresh and flowing. That's a really great point. Not just about when you can do your best work, but actually when you're able to contribute in the best possible way, when the creativity is there, when the ideas are there, when you're fresh and you're really on it. I think that's a really great opportunity for us to take here at the moment. I agree with Monet. It definitely makes a more productive environment. Thank you so much for sending that in. So to move this conversation on as well, with that frame of organizations and leadership and enabling people to do their best work, we've had a great question from SD, who would like a recommendation on favorite tools to share and the information to keep teams engaged and connected, and why would we choose those? Okay, so the obvious ones, Slack's an obvious one. Personally, I'm not here to endorse or not endorse something. If Slack works for your organization, it works. Personally, in my organization, we use Microsoft Teams purely because of everything it integrates. So you've got SharePoint on the back end where you can have all of your files in the company. We're no longer tied to having servers in the office. Actually, every document, file, everything is there in SharePoint, and it's findable. Teams sits over that as a layer. So instead of having to go into Skype to make a call, into SharePoint to go and look for a file, somewhere else to look for an article, somewhere else to thank somebody, actually it's all there in this one layer, and it plugs into all the Office software. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all of these things. I'm no Microsoft advocate, and I probably sound like one now, but absolutely love Teams. I think it's a great thing, but you have to give Slack credit because Slack led the way on this. I mean, it's interesting in that probably only about 5 years ago, we were looking at Yammer, and then Microsoft bought Yammer as this kind of internal social media within organizations, and it still exists, but actually Teams with its, and Slack and things like this with their collaboration approaches have taken over much more. I mentioned earlier, so from an engagement and connection point of view, I think Teams is absolutely essential. Now, from an organizing work and organizing tasks and timelines point of view, I think that's something that you set aside for somewhere else. Teams is great. Teams and Slack and these platforms are great for conversation. We use Asana for our project management. There's other things out there. There's Smartsheet, there's Monday, all of these different things. We use Asana. It's a great way for putting tasks together and for managing your projects and doing individual things. So things like that. And I think you need to build as an organization your own individual suite of things, or whether you're an individual as well, for how you work. What suite of products can you bring together and minimize? Don't have too many. Don't make people log into 50 different things every day. If you can log into one place like Teams and have access to your files, have access to all of your colleagues, everything you're doing, an overview, you can run all your meetings from there. That's a lovely thing, because that's only one thing to open every day. If you have to go to 50 different places for 50 different things, and that's an issue, and you're going to get tired, you're going to burn out very quickly, and you're not going to be as productive. So create an infrastructure that works for you as an individual and as the organization. The organization needs to provide the individuals with both a toolkit to use, but also the freedom to do their own things. I mean, like I said earlier, even though I have Asana for managing projects, I still use Todoist for my kind of personal to-do list every day, which kind of plugs into project work to actually make me go and exercise, or make me think about different things, or remember to post a form back somewhere else, or update my address on something. So there's all of these different things. I think the most interesting thing is like this favorite tools to share information and keep teams engaged. I think the biggest thing for me, I just moved house, and our Wi-Fi doesn't get connected until the 8th of April. And it's, we're kind of relying on mobile data, and you kind of realize now that actually all of these things are great, but we do need to somehow maintain human contact, because if the internet suddenly went, then actually we really all would be screwed. That's probably a question for next week and for another day. But yeah, I think look at different tools, SD, and find what works for you and your organization, and maybe give your people the right amount of freedom. I mean, I know Facebook has its work, what's it called, Workplace? I can't even remember what it's called, but I haven't really used that, but that might be an interface that people are used to. There's all of these different things to use, and giving them familiarity with the kind of interfaces they use at home anyway is a really good thing. So, for example, if people use Instagram, and people like seeing things visually and sharing visually, don't go then and expect them to run through reams of text in a very sensible way to share insight and share information. Actually, try and recreate the experiences they're using outside of work, inside of work, because if that's what they use as a human being, that's going to be how you get them to do, or how you enable them to do their best work. I'm always happy to talk about this. I mean, like I said, email me at any time, andy@andyswan.io. Always happy to talk through any of the other systems that I've seen, and I know there are loads out there, and I know there's some really cool stuff happening, and I really haven't even scratched the surface on that. Okay, so I want to change the tack for the last 5 minutes or so, because I think we could really go into this stuff in detail. And actually, you know what? I'm going to make this a weekly thing, and we may do a special episode on each one of these areas. Maybe we'll do a tech episode. Maybe we'll do a personal mental health episode. We'll work that out as we go. But for now, I've got a really interesting question in. Thank you so much, Catherine, for sending this in. I know you're out there in California and completely locked down at the moment, so I hope all is well out there, and I hope you're keeping healthy. Am I crazy to launch a heart-based business at this time? And I think that's a really great question, because in a time like this, we mentioned purpose briefly earlier, but in a time like this, it would be really easy to go, wow, there's so much uncertainty. Should I just maintain a standard job? Should I just play it safe? Should I not go after following my dreams? And I personally, I may be wrong, you may not agree, and if you don't agree, tell me. I would say this is exactly the time you should be launching a heart-based business. Do what you believe in right now, because if the uncertainty is here, if there's no guarantee of jobs, if there's no guarantee of a traditional career, then what the heck have you got to lose? You may be doing a job that you hate and do it for 10 years and end up losing it, and that could have been 10 years that you put into doing something you absolutely loved. And if it doesn't work out and you're still here, what's the issue? You've tried something. You will never know unless you try. If you believe in it, I guarantee you are 90% likely to make it work one way or the other. It probably won't look like you think it will look. It will probably change completely as you develop it and as you live that life. But actually, if you believe in it, now is the time for that life-work integration that I said. So do what you believe in and really go for it. Catherine, please do email the show and let us know how it's all going. Be really keen to hear what you're doing. It might be awesome to speak to you on one show as well, so you could share it with everybody. Yeah, but good luck with it, and anybody else out there trying to do something different. And I think it's interesting, there's been a lot of news recently with the things the way they are around how are people in the gig economy going to get paid, how are self-employed people going to get paid, and actually I think that's a really traditional point of view, because I think people are increasingly going self-employed and into the gig economy to give themselves freedom to get out there and go and look at doing things in a different way, change that relationship with work. And I guarantee you the most adaptable people to go and change where they get their income from are those people, not the people who are on 0 hours contracts driving trucks or delivery drivers. And you know what, the one that gets me at the moment is Deliveroo. And I saw Matt just pop onto the feed, and Matt told me about this the other day. So Deliveroo putting up their fees for restaurants right at the time when restaurants are in chaos. But actually, the poor riders for Deliveroo who aren't guaranteed a wage, they aren't guaranteed that income. So I think there's a level there that if you're 0 hours or freelancing out of necessity, then that's very dangerous, and we need to protect those people. But the people who have gone out and followed their dreams to do something different, to rethink their relationship with work and have become self-employed, are working in the gig economy, I guarantee you they have the adaptable skills that you need for this modern workplace anyway, but for one that's now completely changed and completely gone wild because the whole world shifted without us knowing. So let's see what that brings. But I guarantee you the people in the gig economy, the self-employed people out there, they're the creative thinkers. They're the ones that are really doing things differently, and they will probably be the people that really help us shape. When we talked about that uncertainty of the future of work earlier, they will be the ones that really help us shape it. Yes, we will still have the major organizations. Yes, we will have careers and employment and career paths. However, they're more than ever, this flexible, different approach to work is kind of coming through. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Catherine, and good luck with it. So, okay, couple of final questions here. Janine, thank you so much for your question. She is looking for positive thoughts with the situation and how to deal with it. Okay, I think that's a really important point. It is very easy at the moment to be anxious, to be afraid, to be absolutely panicked, particularly when you're being told to stay home, when every day it seems to escalate, when you're being told your income is uncertain, when you're being told you don't know if your job's going to be there or what's going to happen next week or what's going to happen with your health. It can be a terrifying time, but it's also a really good time to take stock and look at things differently. If everything has changed, then you need to look at things differently. And so step back. If you need an extra 5 minutes to just breathe every day, take 5 minutes to breathe. You don't necessarily need to act as if everything is normal, and actually take the benefits of the difference. Look at how you might communicate with people in a different way. How can you build some new networks? How can you make some new connections? There are people watching this now, and none of us have probably ever even spoken, yet we're connecting just because of this situation. So it is an opportunity, and it is bad. There are bad things happening to people. And not just from a health perspective, from an economic perspective, there are people who, we may take generations to recover from this, and that's a conversation for another day. However, there is a world out there for those of us who are, even if we're isolated inside, let's make the most of it. Let's make the most of the people we're around. Let's make the most of looking at how we operate our lives, how we work, where we can actually save some time and add some difference and maybe reclaim some of that life balance and integration. But Janine, we will all send you positive thoughts, and I know you'll be sharing others. And actually, what a great thing to do to get positive thoughts? Just reach out to some of your neighbours. Like, we went round the other day and put a note through everybody in our apartment block, just saying, we're here, we're still active. If you're isolating and you need some shopping, let us know and we'll go out and do it. And actually, although we only moved in a couple of weeks ago, all the people we hadn't yet met, I've now had phone conversations with them. We now know each other. We wave at the windows, and it's just created a small community in our own apartment block. And it didn't take much. It just took an offer to say, I'm here, I can help. And all of a sudden, it's kind of changed living experience. So yeah, reach out to people, and yeah, always see the positive. Even in times of uncertainty, there are chances to see things differently and benefit in different ways. So yeah, sending you positive thoughts, Janine. Thank you so much for that. Okay, I have rambled for way too long, but I just want to come up with one final, very specific question before I finish. So Roger, thank you so much for your question. Roger says, Sweden is a big country with lots of small towns and villages, and it is. It's really dispersed. How can we create a better community for people who move out to the countryside? And I think that's a really great point, because out in the countryside, it's far more isolated physically. However, it's beautiful. There's a lot more opportunities around kind of health and wellness and living and getting out and seeing things. However, you do lose that city infrastructure. But I think a lot of what we've talked about today about how we connect remote workers applies to communities as well. It's not just companies and businesses we're talking about. It's social groups. It's location communities. It's towns. It's settlements. It's entire countries. Actually, what we need to do now is collaborate in these different ways and use the tools that we have at our fingertips and use them not just for work. Don't just assume that Microsoft Teams is something for work. Actually, how could you use it to galvanize your community and create some positive impact? And I think it's that. I think it's this integrated thinking, life-work thinking, let's call it, that just brings people together, and it takes somebody to take the initiative. So I think that's probably a good note for me to round this up, because you've had 45 minutes of me rambling, and I should probably take a breath at some point and have a sip of water. But yeah, use all these tools, use all these techniques. I think we're going to make this a weekly thing. We're going to be on YouTube Live as of next week once I actually know how to work it. Well done me. But really, I hope this has been useful. Please do continue to send your comments. Please do email me, andy@andyswan.io, human Andy Swan on Instagram, @AndySwan on Twitter. There are different ways to reach me as well. Please go and listen to the LifeWork podcast. I think probably you will enjoy the stories that you hear. We have a couple more coming out very, very soon, hopefully this week. But in the meantime, stay safe, stay home, and keep thinking differently. Give out, but don't give up, and join us next week. Thank you so much for being here.